So thank you for coming. Please help yourself to lunch. And Dr. McCaffrey is going to do the presentation for us.
Well, thank you, everyone. I see some familiar faces. It's always nice. For those who are downtown, welcome to you as well. As Chris said, my name is David McCaffrey, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Assistant Dean for Student Affairs at St. John Fisher College, Wegman School of Pharmacy. So my role includes admissions, but I work with the students pretty much from when they start the program through graduation. That's the role that I play. But today I'm just going to talk a little bit about the pharmacy profession and then specifically about how you position yourself for pharmacy admission, including the Wegman School of Pharmacy. So I always like to start my presentations by answering this important question, is what do pharmacists do? And I think that's important for us to answer that question because I don't think pharmacy really promotes itself as the dynamic profession that it is. Because a lot of what the pharmacist does, the public doesn't necessarily see. They think about taking things from big bottles and putting them in little bottles, but there's a lot that goes on in order to do that in a safe manner. So when I think about it, among other things, pharmacists are primarily responsible for educating patients about not only prescription but also non-prescription medications. When you think about it, the way pharmacists actually have outcomes, how they affect patients' health care, is they actually have to educate the patient about how to take the medications appropriately. It's incredibly important because we don't go to their home and put a capsule in their mouth or a tablet in their mouth or give them an injection. We don't do that. We oftentimes will dispense medications, we'll counsel the patient, educate them, hopefully motivate them so that when they go home they're able to take their medications appropriately so they avoid hospitalizations, emergency room visits, or any untoward effects of not having their medications taken appropriately. And it's not just about prescriptions. So I'm not going to tell you that pharmacy students don't spend a lot of time learning about prescription medications, but we also spend a significant amount of our time learning about non-prescription medications. Just because it's non-prescription doesn't mean it's completely safe, and the best asset for a consumer really is a pharmacist. And so we educate about both. So for those of you out there, ask your pharmacist about your non-prescription therapies as well. Sometimes you'll be surprised by what they have to say. They also educate and advise other healthcare professionals, for example, physicians, nurses, about medication-related issues. Pharmacy education is somewhat unique in that we spend about 9 semesters in our program on drug use. That's pharmacology and/or therapeutics. So by the time students graduate from pharmacy school, they are medication experts. Now, they don't diagnose disease. That's not what they do. But once you know what the patient has, the pharmacist knows everything that needs to happen to affect an outcome. So knowing that, the pharmacist is a valuable source of information for other healthcare providers because they simply don't have the same type of education. It's a healthcare team, and the role that the pharmacist plays on that healthcare team is really the drug expert. And so we do that, and we do that very well. We do provide expertise about the composition of medications. We often think about an ibuprofen tablet as just ibuprofen, but it's not. There's a lot of other things inside that tablet that may be concerning to patients. It could be dyes, it could be the binders or fillers. Pharmacists either will have that information at their fingertips or be able to find that information because it is important. If you're lactose intolerant or you have an allergy to a dye, you need to know what the ingredients are of those products, not just the active ingredient. And then the last thing is probably the most challenging thing for pharmacists, especially in the community setting, is they ensure that medications don't interact in a harmful manner. And the problem that we run into there is that many of our consumers, many of our patients, they think about medications the same way they think about corn. And medications are not corn. I can get corn anywhere. I can go to Wegmans and get corn. I can go to Tops and get corn. It's corn. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be okay. The problem is, if we start treating prescriptions that same way, I don't know in Pharmacy A that you have something dispensed in Pharmacy B, you're at risk. So rather than thinking about prescriptions and medications like corn, we need to be thinking about a relationship with the pharmacist much like you have the relationship with your physician. Again, I always do this exercise when I go to high schools and middle schools, but it even works in college. How many of you know the name of your doctor? And everyone raises their hand. I said, okay, how many of you know the name of your pharmacist? I do it in pharmacy school and I'm shocked. That's a really important issue for us, is you need to have a close working relationship with your pharmacist because you might be seeing multiple physicians and they're not always talking to each other. The pharmacist is that central point. But most what pharmacists do are they help patients make the best use of medications. Because I said before, we do have some specialty areas in pharmacy where we do provide direct care to patients, but oftentimes we affect our outcomes by working with the patients so that they can take care of themselves. So what about pharmacy careers? Okay, this is just a snapshot. Again, in the folders, I have another list of pharmacy careers and some of the skill sets that are necessary to do well in those careers. But what this should illustrate is that there's a lot that one can do with a pharmacy degree other than what you might traditionally think about you can do with a pharmacy degree. We have a lot of people who enter pharmacy school with us at Fisher who they think about pharmacy and they think about Wegmans because we're the Wegmans School of Pharmacy. Well, that just scratches the surface of what you can do. Now, do many of our graduates go into a community practice? Absolutely. That makes sense. That's where the patients are. Patients aren't in hospitals all the time. They're not all in nursing homes. Most of our patients are in their homes and going to work and going to school. You have to have health care where they need it. That's where the community setting has such a vital role. But we have a lot of different roles that pharmacists can fulfill. We have many board specialties. So we have our graduates who will go on after they finish with their PharmD, which is a generalist practitioner degree. They will go on and do residencies and specialize. So we have our graduates who are oncology specialists, pediatric specialists, nutrition support, critical care, emergency medicine, and the list goes on and on and on. Now, it does take some additional training after you finish your PharmD degree, but there are a lot of opportunities available to pharmacists, not just what you might think of where I'd work in a hospital as a dispensing pharmacist or I would work in a community setting as a pharmacist. Now, I loved working in the community setting. I'll be the first one to tell you. I loved working with patients on a daily basis. I worked in a small, independently owned store. I loved it. But it isn't for everybody. I had classmates of mine that would not be caught dead in that environment. I did not like the hospital environment. There will be something for everyone. That's the key message. So what about pharmacy's immediate future? Everyone wants to know, if I'm going to invest all the time and energy and money to get a pharmacy degree, am I going to be employable at the end? And I think the answer is still yes. It's not what it was like 10 years ago, and I'll be the first one to admit it. I don't want anyone to call me a liar. The market for pharmacy has changed. Why? Because so many people jumped into the market for pharmacy, but there's still pharmacy career opportunities. All of our graduates within 6 months had a position from Fisher. It's odd that I have to mention it that way, but that's the statistic. But again, what we tell our students is they need to maintain geographic flexibility. If you think you can buy a house in Monroe County and you're going to have a job within 5 miles of the house that you've purchased, you might be waiting for a while. However, if you keep your options open, you will be employed. I have students now that are going out of state. They found the firm they want to work for, but they couldn't find the location in the Rochester area or Syracuse area or Buffalo area that they desired. They're going to go out of state for that adventure, and then they will have an opportunity to transfer within the organization as they come back. You know, I want to work at Strong, but there aren't any jobs available. I might go work at another hospital, get the valuable experience, so when a job does come available at Strong, I'm able to compete. Not only do I have a great degree, but I also have valuable experience. So we do tell our students, maintain your options for careers by maintaining geographic flexibility if at all possible. Now, does that mean you can't get a job if you don't have geographic flexibility? Your job just tends to be a little bit different. So I have some students who graduated last year who were anchored to Rochester. They still are floaters. So they're full-time employed pharmacists. They just work at 2 or 3 different pharmacies throughout their week. So it's not necessarily ideal, although as I tell all of our students, you can get your patients to come on every Monday because you're there. You can do it. I mean, doctors have different offices. You're the pharmacist. You're the doctor of pharmacy. You just need to tell your patients, I'm here on Mondays. You need to come in and see me on Mondays. Okay? Now, there is still national and regional demand for pharmacists. I just got 2 emails this past week about upcoming graduates. Hey, we have these job opportunities. Can you please get this information out to your graduates? It doesn't hurt that we've done very well on our licensure exams. So we're actually a sought-after degree program. And then pharmacists are compensated well. So the median salary for pharmacists in 2016, it's the last year we have available data, was 6 figures. And none of our graduates were offered less than 6 figures. But I want to warn everyone here, you work very hard for your money. No one gives money away. Yet I have not found where they give money away. So healthcare is a zero tolerance for error profession because none of us say, oh yeah, you can mess mine up. That's fine. It is. So it's stressful and the volume is high. We have a lot of patients that need not only prescriptions but also the services that are associated with the prescriptions. So I want to let everyone know that it sounds great, but you work for it. So when you get your paycheck, you're like, I earned this. I definitely earned it. So how does one get there? We'll talk about just the educational requirements about St. John Fisher College. If you do have questions about admissions in general, I'll try to answer those, although I'll be honest with you, I do not know all of the admission requirements at every pharmacy school in the country. I'm familiar with some, but not all. But pre-pharmacy requirements tend to be consistent. They're not identical, but they're pretty similar. So our largest admission program is what we call regular admission. So the bulk of our students come through regular admission. Why do we call it regular? Because it was the one we had when we started. So that was regular and everything else is called something else. But we require that a student complete 62 prerequisite hours before they can be considered for admission. Okay? So you have to do well. It typically takes 2 years after high school to complete, but it can be completed over an extended period of time. We don't punish anybody if they decide that it's in their best interest to take 3 years. Okay? It's more important that you learn the material very well because that material is not going to be retaught in pharmacy schools. It's going to be something you're going to be expected to know. So what are those 62 hours? So we have 2 math requirements. So we require calculus and statistics. These are the only 2 math courses that we require, but everyone who ever meets with me, they're going to know that I tell them it never hurts to continue taking math. I would take college algebra just because. We use algebra probably far more in pharmacy than we use calculus. So keeping your algebra skills sharp, because you have to be accurate and fast in healthcare, I think that can benefit you. We also require science courses. So we require 12 semester hours of biological sciences. We do not dictate what they are. Most of our students are going to have like general biology 1 and 2. And then they have a variety of different options for their 3rd biological science course. They take microbiology, some will take cell biology, some will take plant biology. It is entirely up to you. We're able to take any of them as long as it has a lab. Students always ask, should I take more biologies? Again, we don't require it, but if it makes you more confident and comfortable in the curriculum, you know, no one can really take education away from you. So if you feel that it's in your best interest, we will certainly support that. We only require 1 semester of physics with lab. So we can do general physics, we can do Cal-based physics, we can do algebra-based physics. We have a lot of physics options there, but it has to be lab-based. We require 2 semesters of general chemistry with labs. So that's 8 semester hours. So Gen Chem 1 and 2, and then Orgo 1 and 2. So organic chemistry 1 and 2. So that's really the one that when students have a 2-year plan, it's incredibly important that they pay attention and get in general chemistry when they start because, again, organic chemistry is going to require general chemistry as a prerequisite. Now, the important part is we cannot accept advanced placement courses for any of our lab-based sciences. It's fairly standard in a lot of professional programs that they cannot do that. And the reason being is a paper test can't demonstrate to me that you have lab ability. Not that it can't tell me you don't have lab ability either, it just can't tell me anything about lab. So we can't accept that. If you have advanced placement credits, you will get college credit for it, it's just we can't have it satisfy our prerequisites. So again, if I'm talking to a high school group, I'm going to tell all of them to take AP courses. I think it's in their best interest, even knowing that they can't get college credit or at least prerequisite credit for us. So in addition to math and science, which is 38 hours, that would make sense. Pharmacy, it's a science-based discipline. That's not all that makes a good pharmacist. Again, when you think about a healthcare provider, and I tell all of my students every year, I want you to be the kind of pharmacist that makes the patient feel better about themselves before they start taking medication. That's a great pharmacist. So it's not just the math and science stuff that's going to make you safe. It's also these soft skills that you have to accumulate over the years. That's going to make you successful. So we do require 2 semesters of English/literature. Most of our students take 2 semesters of composition. We have to write in pharmacy now. When I graduated from pharmacy school, we didn't have to write a lot. We do have to write now. So developing and continuing to maintain your writing skills is certainly important. We require one course in economics. We do, we recommend that it be microeconomics, but in the event that you can only get macroeconomics, that's the one you're going to take, because never delay yourself over this. And simply because we teach pharmacoeconomics in pharmacy schools, it's an applied microeconomic course, so having microeconomics tends to make people feel a little bit more comfortable, whereas, again, when you think about macroeconomics is more health economics, which we don't teach in pharmacy schools, but if you have that perspective, you will still be successful in the course. I don't see that as a big problem. We do require 3 semester hours of speech, so 1 course in speech, public speaking. Pharmacists, we often think about what they do as dyadic, so one-on-one counseling, but pharmacists now are meeting with groups of people. So I might have a class that I teach for newly diagnosed patients with diabetes. So I have to be comfortable in a variety of speaking environments, not only dyadic, one-on-one, but also in a group. So it's good to go ahead and start to develop those skill sets as well. And then we require 4 courses, so 12 semester hours of electives. This is really where we allow our students to express themselves in our admission formula. I have a lot of students, including from MCC, that'll pick up the phone and they'll call me and say, Dr. McCaffrey, what electives should I take? And the answer is whatever you want. If it counts under these broad categories, humanities and/or social behavioral sciences, you can take it. So find things that you're interested in. If you love history, take history. If you think psychology might be something that's your bag, take it. These are your opportunities. If you want to ask Chris or myself whether a course will count, that's a great conversation to have. But this is the one opportunity really for you to kind of express yourself through a curriculum. In pharmacy school, we only have 6 hours of electives, okay? So you don't have a lot of opportunity really to do anything. So this is really your opportunity to just do something just because I enjoy it, okay? And if we can count it, that's great. If you want to take other courses that don't count for our prerequisites just because you enjoy it, I would encourage that as well. Personal growth and development, I think that makes a great pharmacist, well-rounded pharmacist, so we'll always be supportive of that. Second thing, so you have to take the courses and you have to do well, okay? It's competitive admission in pharmacy schools, so it is important for you to focus on your work and to do as well as you can. The second element that we have is the PCAT. So not every school in the country requires the PCAT. We do require the PCAT. It focuses on 4 areas. So it focuses on biology, it focuses on chemistry, it focuses on your quantitative ability, and critical reading. And then we get a 5th score, which is a composite average. So most applicants sit for the PCAT after the summer of their freshman year. I don't even know what that means, but basically they're looking a year ahead of when they plan to go to pharmacy school. So if I'm looking at a September of 2020, I'm looking at July of 19 is the first time I start taking the PCAT. Okay, so it's a little bit more in a year in advance. So if you're looking at a traditional 2-4 pharmacy, pre-pharmacy, pharmacy school experience, it would be after the freshman year, but it's entirely up to you. We do allow applicants to take the PCAT multiple times. We actually expect our applicants to take the PCAT multiple times. My general advice is plan for 2, hope for 1. Put all your effort in on the first one. Sometimes you knock it out of the park, and then you're thinking about how you're spending that $200 that you just saved. You're getting the new shoes, you're getting a purse, just something. You're on a nice little mini vacation. But I don't like people to set themselves up for disappointment thinking that I only need to take it once and I don't do as well because it's just weird and I'll do better the next time, and then they put all this pressure on themselves. If you expect to take it twice and you only need to take it once, you're proud of yourself. If you have to take it twice, hey, that was my expectation. Okay? I do have some students that take it more than twice. That's certainly a possibility as well. Yes?
Can you confirm that when a student retakes it, you say the best attempt is
Right.
used? Is that the best attempt for the composite or dissection?
We use best attempt in the things that we consider in our portfolio. So everything's best attempt, but not all schools are the same. Some are averages. Some look at the best composite and use subs off only the best composite. So it is very important if you're applying to multiple schools and they're using the PCAT, you should inquire as to how they're looking at it. Right.
For Wegmans School,
We are best attempt across the board. So anything that we look at on the individual level, those sub-scores, we're best attempt in everything. Yes, good question, thank you. And again, the PCAT right now is offered July, September, October, November, January, and February. We expect that to stick in the future. I'm hoping it sticks in the future. The February is a relatively new date that they've added, but we find a lot of our students take it in February and they do very well in February because taking it in July after your freshman year, you have general chemistry and you have 2 semesters of biology. You don't have enough curricular depth to cover the topics on the PCAT. So if you are interested in the PCAT, I have a web page here. You can go, they have a blueprint, they'll tell you exactly what's on it. pcatweb.info. It's the weirdest web address in the history of the world. But you can go there and find their blueprint. They will be very explicit. This is what we test on. So I have students who say, well, I haven't taken that type of course. There are all sorts of online things that you can do. Khan Academy, students are telling me, gosh, Khan Academy was so helpful to me in preparing for the biology and the PCAT just to bolster based on the topics on the blueprint. So anything like that, any MOOC, anything that you can do on your own, I would recommend that as well. Again, going into the PCAT, not only competent, but confident. I really think confidence carries people very far when they take the standardized test. The third thing is we are a member of the PharmCast. So if any of you use the Common App as you were applying to colleges, you will see that we have a Common App for pharmacy. It's called PharmCast. It's really nice and convenient, to be honest with you. You can apply to virtually every pharmacy school in the nation. I don't recommend it because it's cost prohibitive. It's $175 to apply to your first program. And then for every additional program you want to have your material sent to, it's $55 additional. So what I recommend to all of the students who come see me, and some come from MCC, and I've got all over Rochester, if you know who your first choice school is, you apply to your first choice school early in the cycle. Force them to make an admissions decision. If they accept you and you're happy with that, you're done. This year I had a young lady who interviewed with us very early, and she interviewed on a Friday, and we tell them it can take us up to 2 weeks to give you an admission decision because we have to do a lot of quality control and I have to confer with the dean before those offers go out. She called me on Monday. She called me on Tuesday. And so I finally called her back. I said, why do you need this so early? She goes, I love the program. That's where I want to go to school. I have 4 other interviews over the next 2 weeks, and I'd rather just not spend the time and energy to go interview there. So we did give her offer. She did matriculate. She's going to matriculate with us, but she's out $220. Okay? So again, you can apply early in the cycle. We always recommend that. If you have all your materials in and you're competitive and you have an interview, you will have an admissions decision. And if it's one you want, you're done for the cheapest cost. You can add another school at any time, and I'll be honest with you, I can't tell if you've applied to other schools. All that I know is you've applied to my school. So you can do that at any time, and there is no standard time when applications hit our system. Chris and I will tell you we want everyone to apply in July. They don't. They will apply late, and I don't understand how they can stand the stress, but for us it's stressful too because we have to get all the interviews done and we get all this group of people who apply very late. So early application to your favorite school, force them to make a decision, and then if it's done, you're done. And then you know where you're going. You can relax until you matriculate the following September. Now, we do participate in something called the Early Decision Program. So the Early Decision Program, obviously, it gets your decision by the end of October of the year prior to matriculation. You have to have a PCAT score in, so that July and September PCAT, you would have to do that unless you have another PCAT score. The only interesting thing, or the thing that's a caution, is a binding agreement. You can only apply to one school. If that school accepts you, you're locked in. If you decide, hey, I want to go to that pharmacy school in Hawaii because this is for the birds, right? This weather's crazy. I'd rather be on the beach every day studying. You can't. They will lock you out of the system for a year, and there's not anything the pharmacy program that accepted you can do about it. So use that very judiciously. If Fisher is your first choice, go all in. Go all in. We'd love to see you in October. However, if you're on the fence, do not use that system. Okay? Yes?
What if the student is kind of on the fence on whether they would be accepted? If that student wasn't accepted, does that mean they can't apply?
No. If they weren't accepted, again, the school has an option to deny admission. They can return the applicant to the regular pool, or they can accept. There's only 3 things that you can do. For us, I'll be honest with you, the only reason that you would be returned to the pool at that juncture, because it's so early, is if you didn't get something in time. That's it. So, but it doesn't forfeit your right to even apply to the school that you initially applied to. We've had students who have applied to us early decision. We weren't able to do anything with them. They got their stuff in order. We probably had them enrolled or admitted by the end of that calendar year. So they just had to wait a little bit longer, and simply it's because they didn't get their transcript in time. They decided not to take the PCAT in September because they weren't comfortable. We understand that. It doesn't harm you with us if you change your status from early decision to regular. It doesn't bother us. Okay? If you are admitted and you are in the early decision program, we will waive our seat deposit. We have a $1,500 seat deposit at Fisher. So if you do early decision, that is waived. Okay? So our application deadline as it currently stands is March 1st, or the first Monday in March if March 1st is on a weekend. But again, early application is suggested strongly. If your packet is sitting in front of an admissions team, the longer it sits there, the more opportunities we have to interact with you. We can actually help you get admitted. That's part of our job. I have 2 hats. Admission, but also advisor. So if I have somebody that I look at them, I say, gosh, if they just did a little bit more, they're going to be admitted. Guess what? I'm going to call you, I'm going to ask you to come to campus and meet with me, and we're going to discuss what we need to do to get your application from where you are now to where you want to be. Okay? And of course, we also require an interview. That's the best part, or the most fun. At Fisher, we're pretty student-centered, so we like to use it as an opportunity to get to know our students. Everyone that comes for an interview, in my mind, they're my student already. We won't invite you to campus if you don't think that you can be successful in our program. We have to determine the fit. You have to determine the fit, and we determine the fit. But it's an opportunity for us to get to know you differently than what we see you on paper, but just to let everyone know, we're a blinded interview process, so our interviewers don't know anything about you except your name. I know a lot about you, but they will only know your name. The point of our interview is to get to know you. You put an application in front of an interviewer, you've just messed that up. So we don't do that. So don't be surprised that they don't know where you went to school, they don't know anything about you, just your name. But that's nice. You're all starting from square one. Okay? So we do have a variety of activities. The dean always likes to meet. She doesn't always get to meet. Sometimes she's traveling, but someone from the office of the dean will give you an overview. Of course, you meet with 3 faculty or professional staff, someone from the admissions committee, and then we do a question and answer opportunity and tours from our students. So we have pharmacy ambassadors. Those are students that, for any number of reasons, they come from all over. Some of them from MCC, some of them from RIT, some of them from Fisher. But they understand the pharmacy program, and they understand where you were because they were there not that long ago. So I think that we give you a lot of information. I think our students really love to hear from the pharmacy students because they're going to give you the real truth, right? Okay. So we also have a partnership pharmacy early assurance program. So MCC is part of our partnership program. So if you are interested in pre-pharmacy studies and you've met the prerequisite GPA and required SAT, ACT, you have an opportunity to be recognized as part of that early assurance program. So that's something that you would work with MCC on, and they would work with Chris's office and my office on that. Again, what you would have to do in order to have a ticket to guaranteed matriculation into the Wegman School of Pharmacy, you still do the 62 hours. There's no difference there. You must maintain a GPA standard that is 3.2 science and cumulative. You have to complete the PCAT. It says before the February test date. It can include the February test date. We're okay with that. Again, achieving the minimum composite percentile required. And Chris, can you correct me on that? Do you remember what that is? It's 65? I think it's 65. Yeah. So the 65th percentile. And of course, you need to submit an application before our deadline. So obviously, if you don't apply, that's a problem. So, but it is something that is available here. Again, early assurance mechanism, it's still our smallest admission mechanism. So if this isn't a program that you're involved in, don't worry. Most of our students are not involved in an early assurance program. But it is something that's available. And of course, you still have to complete an interview. So really, in some sense, everything is the same, just you have to have an acceptable interview. But if you qualify for that program, we're allowed to guarantee 2 students from MCC would be seated in the pharmacy program. But again, MCC is a great program, so we seat many students beyond just 2. So why the Wegman School of Pharmacy? This is my opportunity to do a little bit of pitch. This is what our mission statement says, okay? We try to focus on developing students in 3 dimensions, not only intellectually, but professionally, and then for their role in healthcare and society. As far as intellectual integrity is concerned, I think it's something that we do well, but we do well because we actually admit some very, very talented students. So really, from my perspective as a faculty member, it's hard to mess that up because you have really bright students who are really dedicated to becoming the best pharmacists they can be. We sometimes just have to get out of their way. But our outcomes are laudable. Our 4-year on-time graduation rate's 90%. Okay? So 90% of the students that enter a class will graduate in 4 years with their PharmD degree. And that's across our lifetime as a program. Our 6-year graduation rate's almost 96%. Should they both be 100%? It's impossible for those both to be 100% because I can give you one example. I have a young lady that was supposed to be in our class of 2017. She'll be a pharmacist in the class of 2018 from the University of Washington. Her spouse got relocated across the country. That distance relationship was not at all a good idea, so we helped her transfer to another pharmacy school. She lost a year. It's unfortunate, so she'll graduate this year, but it counts against me. She's still a pharmacist, and we did everything we could to help her be a pharmacist, but our statistics say if you admitted them, what happened? I have people that are going to be physician assistants now. I have nurses who started our pharmacy program who decided they wanted to be a nurse practitioner or the DNP, the Doctor of Nursing Practice degree. We can't control that. I have people in PhD programs who have started as a pharmacist and determined, you know what? I really am more comfortable in a lab than I am working with patients. And that's fine. Very few of our students actually leave the program because of academic problems. And even those, if I look at it, it's not academics. It's life. And sometimes life throws you a curveball. We work very closely with our students. That's why our numbers look like they do. So we're very confident. Again, my role, I tell everybody, I expect when I meet you in September in that first week of class, I expect to see you crossing that stage 4 years later with your Doctor of Pharmacy degree. That's my expectation. So our licensure exams, we do very well. Our first-time pass rate is just over 96%. National average is 92%. We just got our latest data. I think we're at about 94%. The test did change a couple years ago. It's gotten harder and longer. Where the national average is now 83%, we're at 94%. Okay? So our students are very well prepared for that. This is our law exam. Our first-time pass rate is about 94%. National average right now is 78%, and our last data came back at 90%. Okay? And then this is the hardest exam. For those of you who want to be a pharmacist in New York, this is by far the hardest exam of the 3 that students take. It's called the Part 3 exam, because that's Part 1 and Part 2. And our pass rate's about 85%, where the New York State average is 74%. We were 95% this past cycle, so we just had a test administration in January, and we had 95% first-time pass rate, where the state average is not even anywhere close to that. Should all these be 100? Every one of our faculty believes that they should be 100 all the time. And we're diligently working with our students to discover ways that we can make that happen. So we think that's important. As I mentioned earlier, some of our students go on to do specialty residencies after they graduate with their PharmD degree. So about 21% of our students, when you look at our admitted students, each year we expect about 20% of them to match in residencies. But our match rates, meaning the students that go into the process who are actually matched with a residency, Our match rate is 82%, where the national average is 67%. So again, you're going to be incredibly well prepared to do whatever you want to do as a pharmacist in the Wegman School of Pharmacy. We also focus on professional integrity. Again, these are our tenets of professionalism as developed by the students of the Wegman School of Pharmacy. They basically say, this is what the profession requires, this is what we're going to demand of ourselves. And none of these are bad things at all. Not at all. I mean, I want my pharmacist to have all of those traits. We do have a code of conduct and a dress code. Our code of conduct is largely policed by our students. Our dress code is not onerous by any stretch of the imagination. It's really like business casual. The female students, they're never a problem. The guys, they are barely in dress code early. But as they go through the program, they might be dressed like me as a P3 student. It's kind of amazing to see guys grow up slower, right? Is that it? All the ladies here, I totally understand that. And we also support a variety of different organizations within the Wegman School of Pharmacy. So in addition to a student government, we have 14 local, national, and or interprofessional organizations that are supported by my office and the Student Affairs Office. So I find it hard to believe that you're going to find an area of interest in pharmacy that you can't find a student organization that can help you develop. That's our goal, is to give you opportunities not only in the classroom, but co-curricularly to help your development to be the best professional that you want to be. And the last thing is civic integrity. If any of you know a little bit about St. John Fisher College, it was founded in the Basilian model. It's a lot about community service and giving back. Perfect place for a pharmacy school, because pharmacies are about giving to the community. And so we actually are attracting a lot of students that find that desirable. We do require that our students provide 10 hours of community service each didactic year, so the classroom years of the curriculum. It's not onerous by any stretch of the imagination, but we ask that they do it in a diverse setting. So we say, look in the mirror. If the group you want to serve looks like you, doesn't count. Get out of your comfort zone, because the likelihood that 100% of your patients are going to come from your family and friends is 0. So you might as well get comfortable. And the thing about it is, we think that this is probably one of the most beneficial features of our program, because you develop in ways that makes you look different. They put you in these situations on residency interviews. They put you in situations when they're thinking about hiring you. And our graduates carry themselves at a very high level of not only professionalism, but just awareness and maturity. And we think that a lot of it has to do with this. All of our professional organizations perform outreach each year. Again, they do blood pressure screenings, diabetes screenings. They go all over the Rochester area to serve. It's a great thing to do. You feel good about it, but the patients get the care because, again, not everyone always has access to the healthcare resources they need, so we try to identify those who don't and try to serve them. The other thing that we do is we have service mission trips and medical mission trips that our students can participate in, either in the summer or maybe during one of your advanced practice experiences during your last year of the curriculum. So this year, I believe we're going on 7 different medical mission trips. So I know we're going to El Salvador, we're going to Guatemala, we're going to the Haiti. Dominican Republic was in January. We're going to Tanzania, we're going to Kenya. Students and faculty and pharmacists from the Rochester area, alums, go and serve these communities that literally they're third world nations with very poor healthcare infrastructure. But our students are able to come back with unique skill sets, thinking about the skills that they've acquired providing care in those environments. Why can't you do that in Rochester, where the infrastructure is far more developed? So a lot of transferable skill sets are coming from these experiences. About a quarter of our students each year will go on one of these trips, about 25%. It's not required, it's just something that we have as available. So what we do at the Wegman School of Pharmacy, just to kind of give you an idea, is we follow what we call the know, do, be model. So for all of you, if you're in the pre-pharmacy curriculum, you're in the know part of know, do, be. So your pre-professional work is certainly critical to that, laying that foundation upon which pharmacy schools are going to build. What happens is, as you go through the curriculum, and a lot of our pharmacy students will tell you, the first year doesn't feel all that different from their undergraduate experience, and I would agree with them. We have a lot of tests, you take a lot of classes. It starts to change a little bit in the second semester, but by the time they get to the second year, just knowing the information, that's a C. You got to know what to do with it. That's an A. Okay, having all the facts in your head is necessary, but not sufficient to be a pharmacist, because we're moving past knowing into doing. So knowledge acquisition to skill development. And then as you go through the curriculum into the third year and definitely into our last year of our curriculum, which is entirely experiential. So we have 3 years in the classroom, 1 year on rotations. So we have 8 blocks of rotations throughout a year, and our students are on 7 of them. So they have a 6-week vacation in their last year, and I tell all of them, you better enjoy it because it's your last 6-week vacation for the rest of your life, or at least until you retire. But really, they become the pharmacist at the end of that curriculum. So they have the knowledge base, they develop the skill set, but they become the pharmacist during that experiential learning part. And that's what's really fascinating. So I have students now, they're in the building with me, they're on block 7. Now I've known them since they were first admitted to pharmacy school. And my evaluation of them on that first day is, they're smart, but they're morons, right? Because you go to pharmacy school to learn about pharmacy. You didn't know anything about pharmacy. If you did, you wouldn't go to pharmacy school. And now I look at them and I'm like, they're my colleagues. They're probably better than me as being a pharmacist. And I always tell them, I'd go to you, but I actually think a lot of my graduates, I'd send my mother to that pharmacist. And you really see it at the end. They are so different. It's transformative. Now, I see them across 4 years. It's amazing how different they are. Still quirky personalities. We don't change any of that. But their professional selves are very different. And it's inspiring for me to see that that actually happens. And it happens on a regular basis. It's not a one-off. It happens across the board. Our students really grow into being a provider. So what's our commitment to our students? We want our graduates to be able to practice in any environment they desire. Now, we're a generalist program. We freely admit that. But we think you're going to be positioned very well to do anything that you want to do. If that requires a residency, we think you're going to be positioned well to be a resident. Okay? So that's something we want to do. And again, I have a strong foundation in the sciences, clinical sciences, but also we teach you the administrative, social science, the soft skills necessary to be a provider. Again, we emphasize professionalism, integrity, and diversity. Again, we think that that's incredibly important. Again, I think a lot of our graduates, they recognize that their patients may be different, but that's not a stumbling block anymore. They use the information they've acquired over the years to incorporate that into the care for the patient. Rather than stereotyping them, they certainly understand what it takes to be a culturally competent provider. And so we do emphasize that. But in a nutshell, I think you're going to love who you become. Okay? So I meet with our students. We have a 2-week board review process at the end of their curriculum. And this is a theme. They're shocked at how different they are. And they're proud of themselves. And they should be. They worked really, really hard to attain this status. But they're really, really excited about going out and being a pharmacist. I think that's a great part of what our program does. Some other things, we're very technology oriented at the Wegman School of Pharmacy, so every student has to have a laptop. Primarily, we focus on the first element. All of our exams are taken computer-based. Every question that we write is coded such that a student can actually identify strengths and weaknesses at any time throughout the curriculum. So I tell students, with this kind of information, you shouldn't graduate with weaknesses because you can identify them at any time, and our faculty are readily accessible to you to help address them, to bolster your knowledge or skill, whatever you need, our faculty will certainly be available to you. We do record all of our lectures with Echo 360. Some of our faculty, or many of our faculty, release these just as a matter of practice. The others have it in their back pocket because if it's a bad day like this and you couldn't get where you needed to go, they'll release it to you. You're sick. You never miss class when you're sick at the Wegman School of Pharmacy because they'll release the Echo to you and then they'll follow up with you to make sure that everything that they presented you understand. We do use some audience response systems. It's computer, tablet, phone. We do a lot of active learning in the pharmacy school. Again, it's not just us droning on and on like I'm doing today. They actually try to engage you. If you come over to our building, you'll see that our rooms are not set up this way. Our rooms are set up in almost team style. We can do any educational methodology that we want at any time because of the structure of our room. So we do a lot of active learning throughout our curriculum. So what do you do from here? Okay, the best advice I can give is you're about to embark, you're thinking of embarking on a career. Find out everything you can find out about that career. Do your research. You can find out a lot online. You can find out a lot by coming and talking to me. If you want to meet with pharmacists, that's something that's great to do as well. Find out what they love about their jobs. Find out what they hate about their jobs. Talk to a lot of people, though. You don't want to just talk to one person. Because again, explore the different areas of pharmacy. We do that during our orientation and in the first year of our program. We try to open our students' eyes and minds to all the different opportunities that pharmacy can have. But you can start doing that now. It's nice to come in saying, these are the 5 areas that seem most appealing to me. But if you come in and say, I'm going to work at Wegmans when I graduate, I'm fine with that as well. I have a young lady right now who told me that 4 years ago, and she's at Stanford as a resident. She told me she's working at Wegmans. She's not working at Wegmans. She's at Stanford. She kept her options open. She explored a lot of different things, and she might end up at Wegmans. But right now, she's at Stanford. So I think that's a good idea. Part-time summer jobs in pharmacy. Again, you have to be 18 to be a technician, and sometimes technician jobs are hard to come by. You might have to work your way up. It's amazing. We have a lot of students that work for Wegmans, and I ask them, how many of you were helping hands? And everyone, it doesn't matter gender, everyone raises their hands. They work their way into the pharmacy. But you have these opportunities, take them up on them, find these opportunities. Again, it's one aspect of pharmacy practice, but I think that our students who actually have pharmacy jobs, I won't say they necessarily do always better, but they have a context for their education that other students don't necessarily have. You could also do shadowing, volunteering, all sorts of different opportunities, but be active about this. Again, it's a 4-year investment after a pre-pharmacy investment. I did a lot of research before I went to pharmacy school, and it was well worth it. Now, of course, my career spun out of control every time because I was interested in so many different things. But again, I kept all of my options open all the time. So those are all the prepared remarks I had. Any questions? Fantastic, thank you. Yep. Yes? That are accepted? I don't know if I know that statistic. All right, so here's the problem with that particular statistic. Anyone can apply to our pharmacy program, okay? So you can have a 1.5 GPA and you can technically apply to our program. So I think that we're averaging somewhere around 500 applications per year. Chris, you say between 400 and 500 applications hit our system. We don't interview that many. We're interviewing well less than half of that. So if the bigger question is, if you're offered an interview, what percentage of those are accepted? And that's in the 90s. It's got to be in the 90s. Because Chris does a lot of work screening our applicants before they come into the interview session. So again, there are reasons why someone after an interview would not be accepted. But we have a fairly good idea that you can be successful in the program. We don't have all the information yet. So I would say it's clearly in the 90s if you get an interview opportunity that we can admit. But if the other one's a tougher one, I don't actually track that. You would think I would. Sorry. Yeah, and again, there's no real great way to actually pull that information out of our system either. So, well, I will stick around. Yes. Yeah, we don't have I don't say we have a typical student, right? So we do have students who have 2 years, they have 3 years, 4. We have people with graduate degrees that are coming back to school. No typical pharmacy student. My first admitted class at Fisher, youngest student was 19, the oldest student was 49. So, yeah. That's a big gauge difference, yes. No, but only because his parents got ill. So he withdrew. We tried to get him to transfer, but he didn't think that he needed to focus on his parents, unfortunately. It is unfortunate. So, We have someone who's graduating this year who is actually older than me. So yeah, we don't have, like I say, we don't have a tip. They're in their 50s. Yeah, 21. Yeah. That's the big key is we don't really have a typical student. So. All right. Well, I'll be around. If anyone has any additional questions, feel free. All right. Hey, how are you? Good to see you again.
Me too.
Yeah.
I have a couple questions.
Sure.
From the past.
Okay. Right. Fisher, right.
So, yeah. The first one, what if you apply like early decision